Aqui temos Raquel Saraiva. Ana Bárbara e Raquel vieram diretamente de Recife, gente. Raquel é presidenta e fundadora do Instituto de Pesquisa em Direito e Tecnologia de Recife, IPREC. É graduada em Direito pela Universidade Católica de Pernambuco e mestra em Ciência da Computação pela Universidade Federal de Pernambuco. É conselheira do Conselho Nacional de Proteção de Dados Pessoais e da Privacidade pela Sociedade Civil, CNPD. No IPREC, atua nas áreas de privacidade e vigilância como coordenadora do Observatório da Criptografia, regulação de plataformas digitais, gênero e tecnologia.
Digital.
E temos também Ester Borges, da Minas Programa.
Ester from Minas Programa. Ester is a feminist researcher of the Institute Minas Programa. She has graduated in international relations. And we also have Marialab, we introduced her, called Jancz. She's a specialist in digital security as well as an activist and a feminist that explores the potentialities of the digital forensics. And she also works with other partnerships, and she's well known as the person who is crazy about birds. And also introduced Daniela Araújo, who is also from Marialab. She's a doctor in science and technology from the University of Campinas, focused on feminism and technology. She has been a member of Marialab since 2017. She coordinates all the projects and the research. She's addicted to series, and she loves science fiction books, and she's passionate about everything that has to do with Latin America. So thank you. I will also introduce myself. I'm Fernanda Petira, and I also a member of Marialab. I will be the mediator of this table. And the idea here is to have a round of questions. There are some specific questions about all the research that you work with. And then we will open for questions. And then we will provide the questions to all the speakers, and we will also have a part to present a specific project of Marialab. So before starting, I would like to give you some reminders. Marialab, as many organizations, we work with digital security, so it's very important to clarify some things. Thais is here doing the recording for social media, so we are not good at it, but we're trying to do our best. So we will not show any face here besides ours, and Lucio in the back will take some pictures. So just for you to know that pictures can be published, but not with our faces. Okay, so be careful about it. Okay, in case there are the faces of other people, unless people want to have their pictures. So can we start with questions? Okay, we are very anxious here to start this conversation. The first one is for Raquel. Raquel, in the publication about an overview of the scientific production as a technology of violence in Brazil, there is an analysis of how this word has been defined in the Brazilian publications for the last 5 years. What can we understand by that as stalkerware? And then how can we work with that and then use this as a facilitator? So can you tell us about this project and mainly about this word that is so hard to pronounce, which is stalker aware, and it's very hard to explain about it. Thank you. A pleasure to present this project here. It's a research that we've been doing since the beginning of this year, but then we tried to explore this dimension of soccer as a tool related to this gender violence. And then the word itself had some conflict among people because it's very hard to use it. It's very hard to tell people about it, even though we have a mission of bringing light to the discussion and also bringing this closer to people. And it's something that happens all the time. So it's been very challenging because it's an English word and it's even harder to say it. So then there were many discussions during this research because we wanted to understand if we should bring this word into our own language, but we haven't done it so far. And then the stalker for us within this research would be tools that are used to implement, for example, an action of someone who is like chasing someone. And then we can use many tools for that. Usually they are used for traceability, for many things, but in general, it's done without the consent of the person. But what we've seen in this project is that the stalker is not about the code, but about the purpose and the context where the tool is used in. We can go into details about it, but one of the reports, we've launched three reports related to this research. The first was a literature review as the way it has been dealt with in the 5 last years. And the other one was more technical. And the last is a more legal analysis and social one about the issue related to this topic. And what we noticed is that it's not all the tools, actually the tools that are used for that sometimes were not done for that purpose. We have some applications that are done with this purpose of monitoring someone, but then there are other apps, and we show in the research that we analyzed them, we tested them, show that some apps such as Google Maps, how it can be used. It's something that we use it on our daily basis because everyone has it on the cell phone. So some functions, some features that were not for that are used for that. So that's why the definition of stalker. It has much more to do with the context of it instead of the code itself. And then I can give you more details about it because I'm running out of time. Research has already generated reports, but we also have another guide that will be published probably next year. And we try to simplify everything that we have already shown in three long reports, but we try to bring more light we try to make people understand what it is. There is a gender element here that is very important regarding here, and sometimes we are being monitored and we don't know because the apps are hidden, and then it's not possible to see that. It is something that we need to bring to our world, especially to the LGBT world, so that people can have this in mind. Yes, I read the research and it's very interesting. And the context itself about the software and how it can influence laws somehow, and I think that it's very interesting. So the next question is from Iris and Bárbara. So you have published recently another article about this violence in digital world. There is an analysis about how the most used apps by women are vulnerable to surveillance, such as software, and another one. And then it also takes to the violence that is facilitated by the technology. And those apps are used in some different ways to monitor the victims, such as the financial situation as well as the cycle or the periods of the women. So then what were the main findings related to this research? If you can share a little bit about it, as well as all the difficulties that you had and challenges. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a big fan of Marialab, and I'm very happy to be invited and having the opportunity to be here and to know your work and to bring a little bit of what we've been doing regarding this technological security. This project of the leakage started a year ago, and then it was a project of 6 months. And the difficulty that we had was the time. But we first decided actually we wanted to do a kind of map of vulnerabilities. So then the data were already being collected through apps that were kind of reliable. Not so, so then how could they show a kind of damage? And then even though you were not sure how it will be used, and the idea in our mind would go the other way around, the data that were collected, and then what it could tell us about the use of stalker and how we could explore that, such both the spyware and the stalkerware. And we wanted to check all the apps that are used by the women the most, but we don't have this information. We don't know the users, the profile, the social demographic profile. It was the first barrier that we had. And the other difficulty was the clarity about the data, why they were collected and what for. And then so we have the privacy public that is ambiguous. And then there was just a little information about were used when they were collected. So, okay, speaking of the findings here, one of the most significant things that we had were the apps for dual usage. And then even from the things that we had seen in the literature. And then we saw some comments from people in the app store and the review of the app and the person saying, oh, I suspected that my wife was cheating on me and then I found this app and then he says that he was frustrated. about it because it was not an app for that. And some time ago, I was still in college and then I used an app for my period control and then it would send me tips about my cycle phase and how my partner, like it was just an assumption of a man and how he should treat me during my cycle. Then I did an anthropology work at the time about it. Okay, one of the conclusions here is that we have this concern about these spies, and we have been with the spyware, and then we have contributed to the improvement of it. But then and then there are other layers of concern about it, about the feelings that we have and everything that we have left online. And sometimes we have the same people at home, and then this gender issue comes sometimes from people who we know. And there are other reports showing that the digital violence for gender has to do with the physical violence. Most of the women who had undergone this situation had online harassment, had this stalking issue, and then next year we have a marathon, which is elections, and then this gender. Actually, this women violence is another thing that is part of this trade war. So this the physical protection is another agenda that we need to face next year. So for this first part here, those are the main topics here from me. So I was here checking my numbers here. So there's another thing that is related to software is how 70% of the women who said that have suffered some kind of invasion, they've through domestic violence. So the the fact of they being home is related to it. So the next question is for Esther. So your research that is called the Cavando Our Nossos Espaços, Digging Our Spaces, it will be launched, but we have access to it. And then you highlight that among many findings, women, black women between 30 and 40 years old represent 81% of this racial discourse in Brazil. If you could talk more about this research that you are elaborating and the main results that you have.
Minas program, then we say yes, and then we see who is going to. So thank you very much for those. And before to talk about the research, I'm going to talk about the Minas program. For those that don't know, it's an organization for 10 years working, trying to teach technology, but in a critical way to women, black women and girls from São Paulo. We had a course from Brazil, but it focused here in São Paulo. And we always had this intention to produce investigation. So we were translating a lot of texts. And this research is the first one that have a research with 2 years with such an issue, interviewing a lot of people. It's a very old dream that we had that finally is getting concrete. It started in 2024. In 2025, we did a lot of interviews with black women that in some way they suffered some violence, and we talk about a lot of ways of having these problems. Women that had problems with talking, described computers, violences that are physical and digital violences. So we can have this differentiation. And in the beginning, we had the goal to interview women with the public voice. This was our hypothesis. The black women with public voice, like journalists, activists, working with social movements, they were suffering this violence, and we want to understand what kind of violence. And with the interviews, we were understanding that they were not black women with public voice, but black women that were in a way being seen as dissident from the roles that people were waiting for them. And this data that you said for is from Trindade, this researcher that worked for a lot of time with races and Facebook, and he understands. He says this concept that black women, when they have a good thing in the profession, they are exposed for digital racism and gender violences. So inside our interviewers, we saw people without a public voice the daily, but was a, they were women that were going to the university, and they started the university, and they went to public about the life there, being a mother and studying at the university, or women that like to use the video game, and that's it. The black women cannot have pleasure, for example, or a hobby. This is a moment that she's exposed to suffer some kind of violence. And and this research, beyond reporting those cases of violence, is part of this feminist black biography that we are working with our black scholars, not just women. We also try to look at how those women resisted to that, how to get a space to resist those violence. And that's the name Digging Spaces. In our interviews with activists that work since 2010, 2008 with this issue, she says there was a moment in the internet Brazil in the 2000. Maybe it was possible to dig our space. They dug a lot of spaces. So we had black blogueiras, and there we had our moments of debate, of intellectual production to create nets. And until today, we are still digging spaces. So we try to map this and imagine the futures, the possible futures to those spaces that we are digging. Thank you very much. I was reading the for the pilot, and it is very interesting. It's interesting how they tell that they're seen as people that stop, that do like a stop inside the system. So we wait for this research, for this publication to read everything, and let's continue with the questions to the girls from Marialab. I will start with you, Dani. In the research, Digital Feminist Forensics, I study and propose and development. You explore concepts related to the forensics, the digital forensics, and it's inside the civil society with a focus on surveillance and to combat the gender violence using technology. Could you comment a little bit about the reasons that took you to this research and how was the process, the methodological process that you use it? Okay, thank you very much, Fer. I want to thank everyone that are here, and especially this table, this very beautiful table. We are very happy to do it and to launch this research with a lot of good energies as we have here today. So let's tell you a little bit about the beginning. And it's very interesting to talk after you because the place of Marialab Marialab was when it starts the research. It was a place to shelter those women that suffer this violence. So since 2021, we have a helpline that is Maria da Ajuda to have the to follow up those women. And from this project, we launched in 2023. It was our last party. I think were thinking about that. We started to be inside some groups with other helplines and with other facilitators to have this security, this digital security. Today, we have an alliance with a lot of organizations in the front line who receive those cases of gender violence and digital violence, and how to accompany, how to try to give a solution to those cases that we receive. And one thing that we saw as a common point between us and other helplines, and here I hope they're watching us, like Navegadoras Libres from Equator, from Bolivia, Luchadoras y Tecnas Rudas. They are the helplines that were working with us in this project. In the text, we're going to mention all them because the project would not exist without them. But before the research, we were sharing some ideas, being part of projects, being part of events together, and we saw something similar. A lot of times, not just the helplines, the other organizations that do this first attention, that generally are organizations of women or dissident people, we have a gap, a technical gap. And why do we have that? Because historically, we were not part of those spaces of learning and technical formation. And this is reflected in the way that we are acting professionally. You know what's the problem we can do? We do a great work of sheltering all the first attentions with this person that is seeking for help, but we always have a difficulty to advance, to investigate what happened. How can we get answers? What this app, this tool can tell us that this person is not cannot tell us, but maybe takes us to a conclusion or to understand what is happening. In this time, being in meetings, there is a field inside the civil society that today is very focused on, and it was pushed to be like that because of the events. They are searching, they're researching the spyware and the spy apps as tools against activists. And the context is very different. We're talking about a framework that is very robust of spying made by big multinationals, and generally it's applied by states. But those groups that are dealing directly with these cases, and we can say some groups here, like the Anistia International Citizen Lab in Latin America, for example, is Celtic, as an organization that was part of this research with us, like Pegasus, with Pegasus, and what those organizations were doing to investigate these cases, forensics, digital forensics, using the digital forensics to find answers and to address some responsibilizations. So we started to think, hmm, digital forensics is not just for the spy app, it allows us to do an analysis of what is happening behind that us from the humanities we cannot see. So we started to think maybe there is a possibility, an opportunity to be inside this field, to learn about it, so to share and to improve the work of the helpline. So I finished here, and the answer is thank you, Dani. Yes, this issue is an issue, and understand how we're going to develop with investigation, like with Pegasus, to a context that is close to us, closer to us, and relevant. It's very interesting, this process. Well, so I will continue the question about digital forensics, the questions for you, Paul. In the research, you tackle the issue of the helplines in digital forensics with feminist supply chain. Could you share a little bit more about digital forensics and what is consensual digital forensics, talking about its differences and how this work is done inside the helpline, especially in the feminist helplines. So, good evening to everyone. I'm very happy to be here, despite being feeling like a street dog because it is the very first time that I'm part of this kind of research like that, like an author. I'm here in this table with those incredible girls here. Let's go. So this issue is very interesting. It's in my life since a lot of time. So what we call this digital forensics, this traditional forensics, is that practice done related with the system of criminalistics made by the police and with the goal to produce proofs that are used and used by who? By lawyers, reviewed by judges. So it's a system, a very collective system. So you have the expertise, this person that is going to be getting some data off the app, the tools of the account, and create some kind of report. But this report is investigation is for the legal part. It can also be used not just in legal case, but in an investigation, a civil investigation. There are some cases that are very interesting that we mentioned research of some Latin American organizations that use it, those traditional forensics, to talk about the government, to make some denounce of the government. But that's basically this traditional use of the forensics. With Pegasus and the usage that is of the spywares, this proved uses of this very powerful surveillance apps against the civil society, it was starting to talk about this field of digital forensics. And when we thought it was very difficult to use the name for that, when we are applying these techniques of the market for our field, it's very hard to rethink those technologies. Who is getting used, being privileged with those techniques? And it's a very important difference between done by the police, by the investigative agents, and in our case, the person that is reported is consenting with the analysis. They search for us. Here in Maria da Ajuda, we have a lot of requests to help where this person is coming with a fear that that their mobile is with a spy program. The person sometimes doesn't know the word stalker because it's a hard word, but the person is the popular imaginary that an ex-boyfriend or someone that has kind of knowledge, a hacker friend, and can install something on the computer. It's going to know everything, to install something in my net, and it goes to other equipment, everything around the person. It's not private, it's not safe. So despite not understanding technically how to is it done, it exists and it's used against women. And it's very in the popular imaginary. We receive a lot of requests like that. And well, talking a little bit about how we think to address those cases. The helplines were always definitely addressing this case with the idea of prevention. So if the person is coming to us with this idea, with this fear, we started with analysis. But with analysis that is not trying to prove what happened, it's an analysis for us with a little bit of technical knowledge, and not so close of the problem, because the emotional part is very hard to so it's very hard to separate what is really happening. So with this look, in this first analysis, we are going to try to extract the possible reasons, the probable reasons, especially in these dual usage apps that the girl said. So we are going to do an analysis that sometimes she thinks it's super serious. It's just a Google account that is not well set up. It's a computer that she got from the ex-partner. So we're going to do this first analysis to see if you have a root reason. And we stop it there. If we found, okay. But in our research, we propose one more step. We propose that if in this initial analysis we discover something that is not a conclusive answer, but but we, with our knowledge, see something suspicious, this computer is a little bit strange. We have a second phase of triage and forensics collection. And even me, that cannot do a forensics, I can identify that something is suspicious. I can do to collect this information, and I can send to other people that will know to do this deeper analysis. That's what we are calling feminist support chain. It's what we do, but with these extra steps, so we can integrate those cases with other organizations with more experience. Thank you, Carl, to explain.
It was very nice to share this with other lines, and it's very good to know that we are tuned regarding this. And the technology also helps us with the same kind of demands and situations, as well as the strategic protection support. So we would like to open here for questions. We started by showing the researches. We gave an overview of the things that we do. And I'd like to invite everyone, as well as the ones who are on the streaming, so then everyone can ask questions here. We would like to invite you to come here in the front. I know it's sometimes you are shy, but then with that we can be supported by the translation. Okay, in case you don't want to come here in the front, then we repeat the question here. Not everyone at the same time, but if you want to ask questions, feel free. And that's the Q&A session. We know that many people who are here invited, it's because you are part of this community and you all do works related to the feminist support movement and things that have to do with online violence. So if you want to add something or ask whatever you wish, there will be a few minutes for that. In case you don't want to ask questions, we do have the others here, okay? Okay, there are no questions in the chat and not here in the audience. Okay, I see a raised hand here. Would you like to come here or speak from where you are? Can I speak from here? Hello, good evening. I'm Katarina. I'm the research coordinator I also work with researches related to online topic. So it's a literature that I've just started studying, especially about the software. So I wonder about the kinds of apps and if they should exist, if there should be any creation of it, because people don't use this properly. And I always ask myself if we should access this kind of content. I would like to hear from you about this topic. I'd like to bring here a little bit about how those apps work. I don't know if you're aware of it, but when we speak of a dual program usage, it's a legitimate usage through, for example, a shared link, and it can be used by other kinds of violence. But when we speak of a spyware, software, it's a program that was created with this intention. And it's not only a program, that's what I would like to make clear here, because it's something that goes beyond. For example, for this kind of a program to exist, there should be infrastructure with servers that collect the data. It's not only the app itself, you have the app installed, but then you have a means that distributed sometimes stores, websites, or even the Facebook to advertise something, or even Google. And then there are the servers of the app that will receive the information. Okay, so the information leaves from our cell phone and it goes to the server and everything is concentrated. But the tool, it doesn't exist by itself. It needs everything else, such as servers, website. So in our research, there are 2 points that I'd like to raise here. We went through the store app, actually for all the app stores, sorry, for all the app stores as well as on TikTok, because people go to TikTok and then they want to find everything there. And one of the things that we noticed that on TikTok there was a discourse that is used to sell, to spread this idea of this stalker, as it was a kind of care. So this care speech. So if you like the person, you install this app because you're taking care of that person. So they say it over and over again. There is the parenting control, which has another goal. I don't like I don't like those apps. I don't use like the name parenting control, but there is a difficulty about this surveillance, but it is spread on TikTok. So it is one of the things that we found in our research. And we see that even the content policies are failing because there were not a few videos that we saw. If there is this amount of material in one platform, on a social media, or any kind of entertaining thing as they are known, spreading this kind of information that is nice to monitor someone, okay, nice, just install this app on your partner's cell phone, but then there is a flaw here regarding the moderation of content. But for the regulation, we saw that the response is not complete because all the productive chains are not enough for that. Actually, they are not taking accountability for this. There is an advance to include this into this penal code, but then the response is not enough. But it's something that we also show in the research is the need of the public policies for the reception of women. So the reception of those people who undergo this kind of violence is still not enough. So that's what we need to analyze and create because we still don't have policies for that. Should we speak briefly about this? There is an effort showing that those tools are necessary to lead some investigations, and without them, we will not solve crimes. And then it doesn't, we don't prove that because there are no evidences that the tools that we have today are stopping those crimes in Brazil. So this topic is part of the agenda. And if we say that the government should use it, then we are saying that the government will use this as a vulnerable thing. So, what is our possibility of saying no here? Where is our possibility as a society, as a collection? Actually, as we are in a collective, we can't say it's not possible. And then I would like to organize ourselves toward those boundaries, but then it's not possible. I will make a comment here. I know that you will say, oh my God, Daniela will also make the same speech. But what we are saying here is just a symptom of a capitalist society that places the extraction of data monitoring as something that is banalized and it's something natural. So we are here speaking of matters that are related to violence, clearly. But even you mentioned the platforms. So every business model for Google or any other social medias are for the monitoring and for monitoring and collection of data, which is massive. It's everywhere. There is a correlation with the data, and sometimes we think, okay, it's already there, so okay, like another facial recognition, another app will not make difference because everything is interconnected. And the thinking of our specialization, this imagination that we have, shows that it's very natural to distribute all data in any kind of platform. So it's very hard to say no. Generally, there is no possibility of saying no because when you say no, somehow you will be punished for that. It's something, it's a work that you can't access, something that you can't reach, and many other things that will have not, you will not have opportunities because if you say no, it's important to have this discussion. And how can we make this discussion more popular? And then it's just a tip of the problem, but it's something that has been being built for such a long time. For example, for the surveillance apps with the national defense, it's not isolated from what we have here because we are exposing our lives, we're exposing everything about ourselves. So the awareness and this digital privacy protection should be understood as a collective way, a collective protection. Okay, I think, okay, I'm not working directly with surveillance technology, but as we've heard a lot, is that women have a perception that everything that happens, the violence, the online violence, or anything that is related to it, is not, it's not a bug, it's not a failure of the system. Those systems are created for that. So when we think of the role of the platforms, of companies that are producing technology, we need to understand, we need to take a step back because we see that the failures are standard and we need to understand what they are. And we need to just to understand what they are so then we can take good advantage of them. For example, Facebook, we could understand what Facebook is, and through that, we decided to publish good things, uh, creating groups, and then we used this positively. And it's not only on social media, it's for the whole production of technology, the way it is produced. When we say, for instance, that spyware and software are problems, but most of the cases that we receive are because of this dual usage and another surveillance strategy as society, as users, technological people. We need to to ask companies why they do it. Why do we have Google Maps, for instance? Why do we need to continue teaching people how they work with those features? Okay, they can actually, all the features should not be a standard. We will present the guides that we have from Maria do Ajuda, but most of them are about it. We are teaching people how to deactivate things that the tools bring as standard and they can be used against us. Yes, it's true. We are actually, we struggle with that in order to make the app a little bit safer. And they should be a service. It should be something that would respect the privacy and our digital data. I see that there is another hand raised here. Actually, two questions. If you can come here in the front, please. You can, okay, you can ask both questions. I am Julia. I am a member of a network of feminist women as well as psychologists to take care of mental health. And it's very important to hear from you, especially what Esther said about the internet as an exchange place collectivity, like digging this space, and we still need to do more to dig more because the advances sometimes seem to be different, like that we are in the other way. And then speaking of the content production, we see women, everything that we brought to discuss in an organic way. I think the feminism had this power from social media, but what we see is that women that are producing contents to sell for consumption. So could you talk more about it, about this content production by women? Hello, I'm Patimone from Marialab. Thank you for all the speeches. You presented some perspectives of the research and all the services and how you are building this forensics. And one thing that I thought about intersectionality, which is about women, race. So could you share something about this age issue? Because somehow, not only on social media, but we know that some women suffer different kinds of violence. And how was it mapped? If somehow you have something interesting to share with us regarding this topic. We have two questions. One that is for the content production that brought our colleague here, Julia from Divan, and the other one is from Pachi that is about the age cut that also takes into consideration the violence. I will start with the general observations that are somehow connected to both the questions. It's interesting to say that Marialab starts with this idea, and we continue working like this with this knowledge sharing. And then, as many groups are marginalized, are far from this knowledge technology and this the construction of this myth of technology, and somehow it affects those groups and then are much more vulnerable. And why am I saying that? Why do I think that both things are connected? When we are speaking of age groups, we can speaking of children, young ones, or even elderly. There are different risks, but both are being dragged to this digital world. It's impossible not to be in this space, but there is no way because when you need to access health, education, we need it, and we still have some kind of negligence. So then we need to understand those tools, what they are for. We need to, it's not only the technique itself, but speaking of content production, it's the same. Okay, it's okay to produce a content, to disclose whatever you want on the internet, but the problem here is that all the big techs, actually, the issue here is to believe that all the big techs are the only possibilities that we have. I don't know, I think internet has been known for 50, 60 years, and the idea is the same, that everything was seen as this marketing idea. So speaking of the Marialab, we have those independent ways of digging our spaces, and and then this way we don't go through those big tags. We have to search for alternative paths, and some, and then unfortunately people are not doing this anymore. But then there's no way of resuming those features. We need to look at those features in case we want to think of a technology that is different from what we live today.
They were based in cycles that we knew black women, their design, black bloggers, and from that we were creating this study in this frame where we have women from 20 to 40 years old. And inside the investigations of the review that we made, we talked about the thing, he always used this range of age. The women that are suffering stalking, and there are methodologies to think. There is the question, the topic that if those women are more online, that's why they end leaving more violence, they use more technologies and surf more. They talk more about this than other ages. We also had interviews with women that are 50 years old, 60, and the type of violence is very different. Normally, it is connected with daily questions, daily issues. So sometimes the women from 20 to 40 sometimes suffering violence from someone that she doesn't know. The attack comes from the social media. The woman that is older, since what we saw, is someone from the war that she knows from a smaller city, from the group, the neighborhood group. So the violence is another place. So we need to go deeper. What is the age saying about the violence, about gender violence with technology, and about the content production? I think that linking with what you said, to lack with the education, how to use the technology for girls and women in general. I think there is also a situation that is that after a violence case, the content production is going to change. And we can map that very well. How obviously is to think about the silence. So this woman is not using social medias, but it's not that that happens. The silence is strategic. Normally, they this violence case be in contact with everything that we are producing, go to another aspect. So I'm going to be very strategic with the way that I use the social media, how I use my mobiles, my apps. So I start to have two accounts, my private, my public account. I start to talk to my friends using a different app with free software. There's a difference of behavior from the violence. Thank you, Esther. So about, did I interrupt you? About the topic of the age. So we didn't have this framework. Inclusive is something that we wanted to understand the profile of each user of the most downloaded apps. But we didn't have that. I want to use the opportunity to say that with a lot of frequency is that argument that to protect children and teenagers, we need to flex to make the tools a little bit more flexible. And we think that this idea is not so good despite it's at the center. And what we are trying to build as an argument and always trying to share it as a strategy is that in the opposite way, those children, they need to be protected and they need tools that they can rely on to be in the internet in a safe way. So what in a lot of occasions we are talking is that the security is not opposed to the privacy. We don't have to choose between one thing or another. And to protect the children, we need strong systems that we can rely on and informational tools that will allow this child to develop, having the privacy and the developing according to the age of the child. All those things. In other researches related to this audience, we saw that what is happening in relation to the rights of children and teenagers to recognize that is crime before the internet is not crime, but we need to recognize the new rights of those children since they are part of the online world. So I think this is a task, our task. The ECA, the digital ECA was a step for that. And what we are saying that more than ever, we need security tools to the children to be in a safe way on the internet for their development. Thank you for the words. Dan, Esther, Anna. Actually, it's not an easy question because this intersectionality that brings a lot of light, a lot of ideas or other topics that we can study a little bit more and work with. We have to do with this age framework, this gender framework, this kind of that we are going to work with. I believe that I understand that there are a lot of paths to think about new researches and new sub areas of what we are doing. I don't know if there is an online question. Yes, we have an online question and we'll see it and then we go to the next part. It would be interesting if you could develop a little bit of the data in relation, in the research in relation to the gender, political violence, and race that's facilitated by technology. Okay, so research in relation of gender and race violence in the internet. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Maybe you? So think here about our interviewers because they are anonymous. So how to talk about it without exposing no one? But this political violence was something that was part of our investigation. It shone with people from the countryside, from small cities, with groups of WhatsApp that were used to think about that date. And after electing her to stalk her, stalk the person that was fighting the city council about the topic. And some pictures of the person, the WhatsApps of the city. We saw people that not in smaller cities like small cities, but bigger cities that were almost have mobilizations for the elections. That the election was made impossible of winning it in the last minutes of the campaign. This was we can see that a lot, and especially those candidates in some way were seen like dissidents of the place of the black women, like black lesbian candidates or black candidates that were talking about left wing ideas. So we saw that in the research. It was not the only kind of violence, it was the type of violence that we were the most, that we were going to map the most, but we saw it, and the things are very, very ugly. Kata, that is here, that she made the question, and she has a research about that, and we see it as a direct attack to the political freedom of those women and to the expressions freedom of them. That's something that you're going to see in our publication in January. So in the literature review that we made in the beginning of the project, one thing that we saw is the lacking of data about that. That with the frameworks of the age frameworks and race frameworks, from the investigations that we could map, the conclusion that we got is we are lacking of researches about this topic, about the Stockholm topic, with the age framework and race framework. So it's a suggestion for you if you want to produce it. We don't have how to do this, to talk about those frameworks, because we don't have data for that. I was going to talk about the absence of data, and more than the absence of data, the acknowledgement of some violences. And talking about spyware, there is a very big difficult that we have to identify where is gender in those cases of violence and race. Oh, race is something very big and it's very linked. And we talk a little bit about it in the research, but I think it's worth to deep that is when we talk about gender violence, the people have an imaginary, they start to understand that just the violence with the partner. And that's very good that you just said, who? Because we all know that it's bigger than that. So the political violence is is it's important that today we have a legislation starting to talk about there. Is we have investigation from Dasmina, for example, from Internet Web, to show those things, but it's very hard to people to acknowledge this political violence and gender political violence. In the case of spyware, there is a gap because what is spyware? A political violence, right? And where are the researches, right, to identify the other indicators of this difference of people that are being victims of this kind of surveillance technology? But who are they? Not the names, but who are they? There is an absence, a total absence, and there is a difficulty of big financial companies of recognizing that gender is a topic, gender is important. This is something that is was said in a very clear way for some groups, but for other groups, it's not a topic. So it's a huge fight, and it's a fight in terms of financing a research because some things are made inside what we say. So you propose a project that doesn't talk about gender. Look, and when you're doing that, you say, "Oh my God, gender! I didn't know." But that's the kind of thing that we have to do because, unfortunately, inside this field, when we talk about intersectionally, we see is seen like, oh, the feminist. So in fact, it's an absence, and I was going to be very interested in study that. It depends on a lot of topics, but with no doubt, it's the next step, next steps, next researches that are coming. There is one more raised hand. I will get the question, and I ask you to do a brief finalization And we also wanted to do the launching, the release. So first, the question, so we can go to the end. It's a comment, it's not a question, because I think about this political violence. I'm thinking about the fourth LGBT, and we are doing the book Care and Braver. And we have some data of intersection with gender. So here I'm doing like a campaign, but that's just a comment. Thank you. Thank you very much. Later on, we're going to look for this research and the data. So I will call you to do the release of our manuals or guides. So we have here our little present for those that are part of the table. This is our eco bag from Maria da Ajuda. It is being sold upstairs, and inside of it we have the material that we are launching today. We were sharing it in closed groups, but they are manuals of digital safety from the main topics that we receive in the helpline. So they are manuals and their goal for people from with any level of knowledge, so you can use the tutorial way to get to this objective. So each one you have a topic. The first one is the favorite topic, that is passwords. It's important. Then authentication with two factors, how to use, how to activate, safe messages, Signal, how to make Signal and WhatsApp safe, emails, clouds, and the last one is a step with a very important data for those that want to put an extra layer of cryptography in it. And those materials, they are published in our site. Do you want to say something, President? Yes, they are published in our site with three languages: Portuguese, English, and Spanish. It's a new site. We started with that. We don't do a party for 2 years, so we are now publishing everything. So here you have the manuals that you can download in the three languages just for today, to thank the presence of everyone upstairs. We are making available the manuals to get to take to your collectives and organizations. And in our website, if it's possible to open this digital forensic, is you see our investigation and the guide that is about the feminist support chain. So you have in three languages for you to use it. In the end, we with the investigation we have two contents. The communication advisors, they are looking at me and they're saying, oh, finally they're going to do it right. So we have the research. It's a cool research, not boring. And we have this other content that is the guide of digital forensics with a one document, two tutorials. We have four tutorials. So it's also a material that we are developing. We are going to keep on developing that, bring more information about this topic. I want to say thank you. The guide is very good. I invite everyone to look, to read a little bit about that and see how this idea of forensics is accessible to do this first analysis, investigations inside our collectives. That's it. And now you can say bye, say thank you. I want to thank you first for the opportunity to be here with you, talking to you, and saying that materials is they're all available for those that want to read about this topic, and there are other hundreds of teams and social media. Please, we still need that. So follow us, and that's it. We are available always that you want to be here talking about those topics. Thank you, and let's go to the party. I want to thank you to reinforce. Let's go to the party, everyone. We have the Cervejaria Corisco with us. Those that didn't taste this kind of beer, there are a lot of beers in the menu, and we have the ticket to do it. I think it's not so beautiful, but it's a ticket to the beer, so you can get your beer with that. Release is here selling, so those that like the beer you can buy. And we have another person here producing the food of our meetings, and then we have some DJs to end. After this speak, I don't know what can say to invite you. I invite you to be part of the blog of the Minas Programa. We have a lot of researches. We have translations, reflections on our study group. I think that this research is going to reflect this thing that we do. Those that are used to read our studies are not going to be surprised. But in the site of General T, that is the magazine of the people that are financing us, that is financing Marialab and Internet Lab, we have two articles of our research, the two of them in Portuguese and English. So it's worth to read a little bit. Can I do my list of thank? Why? Because they are special people. So we want to thank each one of them. So the Digital Collective, Digital, to receive us here in their house, in their home. It's very beautiful, very comfortable. To say thank you to Vidigiaria that is here doing the streaming with three languages in YouTube. And to thank Sarah and all the team, the translation team that is happening right now. We want to thank the financiers of those materials. We have a lot of things. It's how we work. So we have to look for a part of the money in each place to do it. So first APC, the Association for the Communication, that is the foundation that is supporting the research of Marialab, of Minas Programa, and it's going to be the releasing in English of those researches possibly in January. We want to thank Data Privacy that is here, that gave us the support to create the manual of forensics and all the materials that are related to that. So it's a result of the research that is beyond the research and a way to return it, to give it back to the community. And to say thank you to the Heinrich Boll Foundation that is doing this investing to make possible this table so we can reunite to celebrate this year, this hard year with a lot of work, but it was very beautiful. We have a lot of beautiful things to celebrate. We have to enjoy the good moments of joy and happiness. Thank you. Applause, please. I was a little bit touched, I think, about the year and everything, but thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I have great admiration for you. That's the second time that I see you in events, and I am very happy to meet you. Thank you for those that sent me emails, Thais, and the organization for the mediation. That's it. Um, we are going to connect and we keep talking after this meeting. Thank you, Raquel, Call, Esther, Dani, and Ana. So thank you to all participants, to the audience. Let's go to the party.